And the procedure says, how do you get there? How do you do it?
So what, the reason why I'm asking because the board has that standard, operation procedure, right?
They have some,
They have some,
not,
okay,
not a
and
lot.
that's what's going by initially.
Right, but there's a lot of things that they do, they have no procedure associated with them. That we
I
need to
just
develop.
want to.
Okay, so let me tell you, by the way, this is fantastic feedback. So one of the things that I need to do by July 31st is I have to evaluate all of the alternative potential of what Pritchard Water is going to look like in the future. And that includes organizational and structural things. So really what you're telling me is if we were to return back to the status quo, which is putting the board back in place and moving forward, which is clearly one of the options, we need to focus on the qualifications, the structures, the power, and the checks and balances associated with that board. And I need to address those issues as part of that alternative, right?
Yes, sir. And if there is another alternative, I wasn't here at the first meeting, like you guys said, so I don't know what another outcome
There are.
might be.
Yes.
That's there.
Several.
If one other alternative is that there is a regional sewer governing board, I would vehemently oppose one that's appointed only by one political leader. The legislation that you mentioned that did pass said that Pritchard would go under Mobile, but the only appointing authority was the mayor of Mobile, and there was no place for any representative even from the city. I opposed it vehemently only for that reason, because at first I said the legislation did end up that way. It was going to be the mayor of Mobile appointing all people on the water board, and not one representative spot was reserved for Pritchard, Alabama.
And when we got through with it, it was two, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, we worked very hard for this, and I knew it like the back of my hand. When we got through with it, it was two representatives that would be coming from Pritchard. Now, you are absolutely correct in the beginning, and that was one of the things that the citizens disagreed with. But when the final analysis came down, there would be two representatives from the city of Pritchard.
Almost back to last week, Haven and Sawyer. Now, we must all realize that there is an open and active investigation by FBI into what has happened with Pritchard. Now, and this part right here, this week, the Pritchard Water Works and Sewer Board requested that Hazel and Sawyer evaluate different alternatives to improve the existing tank operations in the water distribution system. Whatever that part. I find it hard to believe that Pritchard Water and Sewer Board requested Hazel and Sawyer.
Right now, I am Pritchard Water and Sewer Board.
Okay, but you don't, let me say this, you don't know that the existing Pritchard Water and Sewer Board let Hazel and Sawyer go because of unethical practice. And if they, and very possibly are being investigated now. This is a slow investigation. And I'm just surprised that how big
They are by far the most qualified firm to do the work that we're doing. They have done a lot of work in the past. They're a nationally recognized expert in the field, and they are going to do quality work for us.
And I'm the expert on Pritchard Water as a citizen.
Hazel and Sawyer is not under that.
It's no excuse me, may I interject as a former board member?
No one knows that. Okay.
May I say something? I apologize that I am not currently there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I have not been able to hear all of the conversations, but, I have heard something part. I wanted to first address Dr. Morris, and say that, when she was speaking about the recourse, that citizens can have for the board, there is a recourse in the legislation, and I can get that title, that allows for the impeachment of the board in the event that they have done anything that is financial crimes or financial, malfeasance, or even if they have negated their duty. Okay, so there is that recourse, which is in the law. But, if we're talking about how we're going to move forward with establishing the governing body for when Mr. Young leaves, and I believe that's the conversation that we were having. I would hope, Mr. Young, that you could go back to the powers that be, whether it be our state legislators or the governor, whomever, ADM, whomever, and get us the opportunity to be able to elect our water commissioners. The only people that the water board should be answering to is the people that they serve. It should not be to where they are there at the political favor of someone. It should not be to where their friends and kids are appointing them, but it should be where they are accountable to the people who they serve. And so I know that there are other water boards within the state that does that. Our charter can be amended. And as you just stated, you are the board. So if you can change the incorporation to reflect that the appointment is no longer coming from the council and the mayor, to where that every cycle, whether it be 6 years or 5, whatever, 2 years, whatever it is, that they are elected, then that is what is the best course of action for the citizens of Bridgeville.
Okay, I've heard all your concerns. They're great concerns. What you're telling me is this one option, or maybe if we do a regional authority, as you said, a couple of the options I have to spend some time on how they are governed. And so I will tell you, that's something we're going to address by July of this year when we present all of the options, and I will focus on that. And we kind of need to move on. We got a whole lot of other things.
One last thing.
Yeah.
It's called, I always call it Bradley and Company. It's not no Mia Bradley didn't do what she did by herself. And this is a long investigation. We don't know who. They're added every year. They get them one more that no one suspects. Bradley and Company wanted Mr. King to remain. So that tells you something ain't right there. In the investigation, as I met you, when I met you the first time, I said, collusion between Pritchard City Council and Pritchard Water Board is what created the thievery and the thug stuff that has happened. But now that the collusion has gone higher in power, so hey, we gotta go downtown in the big building now. We gotta go to Birmingham because I do not see where you are benefiting the city of Pritchard with what you're doing to Pritchard. A broke city. We're broke. All this stuff you coming here with, we can't afford it. All the money's been stolen.
Okay, I will take, that's fine. But frankly, my job is to convince you that there is value here, and if I'm not providing value, I'll be happy to leave tomorrow. Okay, I'll make it that simple.
You
My
tell
job,
Pritchard Water that they can't put water over until 3.5 months after person.
that was not me. Okay,
Who
and
did
we'll get
that?
into that. Okay, but let's focus on that. Okay, let me move on to the next item here. Okay,
Mr. Young, excuse me, board. I will not out of, policy and procedure for this, unless you yield to me to speak. But I just want to add some clarification to Ms. Beatrice Morris, Ms. Katie Davis, as well as anyone else that has any, issues with Hazen and Sargent. I have documentation here. I am a former board member, and I was at the board meeting on November the 9th, 2022, when Chairman Russell Heidelberg, by the late Vice Chairman Ron Davis, and Secretary Treasury Beverly Bunch voted to remove Hazen and Sargent after and listen, I'm not pointing you out or anything like that. That's fine, Dr. B. Just relax. I have documentation. As I always have. And just want to clarify that when I was a board member, I did fight for the citizens. And that's the reason why I went out with my own money and hired an attorney, sir. So I have this, and I want to share it with you. After the meeting, if, in another private meeting over at the water board, but I just wanted to let you know that I have documentation to support and discredit what has been said.
okay, that's fine.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
let's move on.
Yes, Mr. Andrew, you got it right ahead.
You didn't say right about that. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on. Okay, so bottom line is my action item is I got to consider everything you said regarding governance and things like that with whatever alternatives you work with. And I will do that, and you will all have an opportunity to review whatever governance structure I come up before the final alternatives are presented. Yes.
On the good of I respectfully appreciate what you are and why you were here. I understand why you were here. If you don't understand people, if you owe somebody $50 million and you can't pay them, they got a right to ask somebody to help them. So you don't get angry about that, but then all we're here to do is to try, it was my understanding, and if I'm wrong, I may be, to provide the best advice we can based on the facts that we have, or we think that we have. And if the facts are not wrong, if the facts are not correct, straighten them out. But I really, Mr. Young, I could tell you. I could tell the tension in your voice. I don't think most people here are disrespectful. Am I right?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on.
Real concern, I'm just
So the next thing we're going to talk about is we were given a consent order by the state on the water side, and that consent order was a result of the state and EPA coming out and inspecting facilities, finding some deficiencies, primarily with our water storage tanks and some other things like that. Unfortunately, the board did not adequately respond to those inspections, and so the ADEM moved forward with a consent order. They also had concerns about the financial sustainability of the utility and a number of other things. So one of the first things that needed to be done was what we call a hydraulic analysis of the system. And because there's 5 storage tanks in the system right now, the condition of those tanks is, let's just say, not good. And so the idea was you need to go out and spend a whole lot of money to maintain those 5 tanks. However, before you go and spend money maintaining the tanks, it's good to take a look at it and see, do the tanks actually do what we want them to do? It would be a big waste of money to paint a tank and then determine it doesn't do anything for the system. So the first thing to do is a hydraulic analysis of the system, determine are the tanks in the right place? Are they the right height? Are they the right volume? And then determine what you're going to do. So that's what this hydraulic analysis is all about. Now, the conclusion of it is one of the tanks does absolutely nothing for the system. And that's the one over by the office. It's too low. Two or three of the tanks, we can probably make some adjustments to the system and we can get them to work the way they are. And one of the tanks, we can probably keep in the short term, but in the long term, we have to increase the size of it. So now, rather than going out and just painting 5 tanks, we now know which tanks we need to maintain and what they need to look like in the future. Now, I'm going to attempt and to take 2 minutes to explain to you what a hydraulic analysis is in full transparency. And I apologize for all the technical words in the report, but again, I'm going to be transparent and give you exactly what I get. So let me explain things to you here. So we get all of our water in Chickasaw and Pritchard from Moss. Okay, so let's put Moss over here, and we have 7 points that water comes in to Pritchard and Chickasaw from Moss. Okay, so that water has a certain pressure to it. Okay, so let's say it has 50 pounds of pressure, which is typically the pressure you have coming to a house. So when it comes into the system from Moss, it has 50 pounds of pressure. Let's say that's right. And then as it goes through the pipe, there's friction in the pipe and it loses some of that pressure. So it starts at 50 and it kind of goes down, 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 down. Now, and pressure is the same thing as height in the tank. So again, being very, very technical, 1 pound of pressure is equal to 2.3 feet in a tank. So let's just look at this as plate of the pipe in the tank. So we have some tanks in Pritchard that sit like this. We have other tanks that sit like this. And we have other tanks that sit like this. So this tank right here, if the water height is always this high, this tank's always going to be full of water. That's not good for 2 reasons. The main reason is the water's going to sit there and get stale. And when it does come out of the tank, it's not going to be any good. That's the standpipe of the office right now. Okay? We have some tanks that work perfectly fine. They kind of go up and down as the pressure goes down, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. And that's the 3 tanks that we're going to keep. And then we have other tanks that we can't use this because the water pressure is only right here. So what you do for those tanks is you have another interconnection with Moss, and you bring water directly to that tank, and you shut the valve right here, so it doesn't see this line, it sees this line there. Okay, so that's 6 years of my education in water in 5 minutes. But that's very, very fundamental what's happening. So you keep this tank, you get rid of this tank, and this tank you do a bunch of valving and control valve changes to allow you to keep that. So the highest tanks sit at the highest elevations. This is the lot tank. Yeah. Okay. So that will be high enough if we make some piping and valving changes. So we're going to keep those 3 tanks. Like I said, the only one I'm going to eliminate is the standpipe at the office. This one, the lot tank, is too small, but it'll work for a while. And then at some point in the future, when we have the money, we'll make it a little bit bigger. So that's water hydraulics 101. Okay. Okay. What? Okay. So that's the other thing that goes on. So it's about $11 million associated with eliminating 1 tank, maintaining 3 tanks, increasing the size of 1 tank, and doing all the valving and piping that we need to do. Okay.
But John, let me ask you a question on that point right there. Okay, so we're talking about storage, but once the water comes out of those tanks and into the system, we're gonna lose it. So is it prudent to do the tanks first before we do the lines? Because in that order, it was saying about how
simultaneously. And to do this right, which takes a lot of money. But let me move into the next discussion, if you're okay with where we are so far. Yeah.
If you didn't say that you wanted to put the water to not put water on them for about 3.5 months.
Okay, I'll answer that question. So in the receiver order, the judge basically changed how shut-offs would be done. Primarily, there was input from some community groups into the receiver order. I didn't write the receiver order. That was written by the courts. And they basically said, what I need, I have to follow the rules of the courts. And it said 60, if you don't pay your bill for 60 days, you then come in and we will work out a customer assistance program or allow you to do payments over time. And we have 45 days to do that. So 60 days from when you paid your last bill, plus 45 days to develop a customer assistance program.
But then it's only a certain amount of time, they had, there's a certain amount of time that they had to dispute the bill, right? They couldn't just not pay it, they had to come in.
They have to, within that 45 days, agree. If they agree we're not gonna pay the bill and we're not gonna take part in the payment plan, then we can basically shut them off.
Right.
But they have 45 days to develop that, and that is in the order, and I think a number of local community groups put that into the order, and I have to abide by that order. If I had my way, I would probably shut them off a little bit sooner because it helps us on the financial side of the business. But that's not the rule that I have to, that's the rules, I can't follow my rules, I have to follow the rules of the court.
When we got many $millions out here that have not been identified from the money that was stolen, they can buy a whole bunch of people, and that's what's happening. So a lot of people need to invest way up there.
Okay, let's stay with the agenda here. So one of your concerns was, this is all gonna cost a lot of money. And I had to sign this consent order, and I went to ADEM and I said, listen, you're asking me to sign this consent order, to take care of tanks, to take care of leakage, to protect our health. I don't have any money. And ADEM said, we encourage you to file for grant money. And we would recommend you file for $20 million of grant money through ADEM. So what I've been doing the last few weeks is, last week I submitted $20 million worth of projects. That was another one of the handouts I gave you before the meeting. And you'll notice that there are four. I asked ADEM, how do you want me to prioritize the projects that we put in here? They said, what we'd like you to do is address the consent order issues first, because they deal with public health. The tanks in the front and some of the issues there, the sanitary sewer overflows we have, things such as that. So they're top priority. Leakage to them is a top priority for two reasons. One, public health issues, and secondly, because of the cost. The money that we're losing, and the money the water we have to buy from on if we have the leak. And they recognize that we did have financial issues here in Bedford. So go ahead and spend some of the money, on the leakage. And then third, I've operated hundreds of water systems in my life. I've never seen a water system that doesn't monitor what's going on in the system. We don't know the levels of the tanks. We don't know the pressures in the system. We don't know our treatment plant. We don't know if they're unmanned for a period of time, and we don't know what's going on with unmanned. So to put in the controls and monitoring that you need to make the system run properly. So there's $20 million of projects that I took data last week, have the tanks, have fixing pipes, leaks, have fixing sewers and pumping stations, sanitary overflows, and have the controls you need to properly operate the system. Is that enough money for Pritchard? Absolutely not. We need tens and tens of millions of dollars more, but this will get us started. So last week I submitted $20 million worth of projects. They're reviewing them right now. The next step in the process to get the formal funding is you have to submit what they call a pre-application and then a preliminary engineering report. One for water, one for wastewater. We're working on those right now, and hopefully we'll get them submitted by the end of the month. And at that point, ADEM will act on the grant. Now, they've asked me to give them 4 groups of $5 million each. We may not get $20 million all at once, we may get 5 once or 10 or whatever. But believe me, guys, that is really, really good news. And so we are hoping that maybe sometime in March, we get 5, 10, $50 million to start replacing it.
Well, it is have a continuation of grant and some schools. I know I see this as a continuation.
If you get $5 million, what's they gonna try to do? You're gonna try to fix the leaky toilet or fix the tank? What you want to do?
What ADEM has said, they want me to focus on public health issues. So that public health issues, some of the tanks, and I won't get into details, but the way some of our tanks are right now, you can get what they call cross connection, the water can be sucked in. So I have to take care of the public health issues there. When the sanitary sewer overflow, animals overflow into the street, that's public health. So I'm gonna focus on public health first, but sometimes you get actual benefits, because if you're fixing the pipe, not only you're protecting public health, but you're also stopping leaking, which helps keep the end. So it's a little bit.
Keep thinking about $75,000 a month if you lose it. You get $1 million another business. If you do that $75,000 time, well, that's $900,000 a year. You lose this. I think I'm saying, I assume you got 35, 40 people over there.
So later on the agenda, we're gonna do legal issues, and we're gonna talk about Alabama. I anticipate that was gonna be a big thing. Yeah.
I always try to tackle it. Okay, what administrator? Your storm project, they don't know. And we need a completed plan. Phase 1.
With funding,
Let's phase it on now.
Okay, so,
with the finance plan, including a finance plan
right.
in that strategic plan.
Okay, so let me address that. So the interesting thing about the $20 million is they want it all spent by the end of 2026. That is going to be a huge, huge effort, but we're going to give it the best we can, because we need every penny of that. Then we're also doing, and we talked about the last meeting, asset management study. We will develop a 40-year capital program, which will tell us once we're 2026, what's the next bunch of money that we need moving forward? And those projects will be prioritized based on public health and finance and all those things. So we have the short term, this $20 million over the next 2.5 years, and then we'll have a long-term plan coming out of the asset management.
So John,
Yeah.
as I understood it, when we were in a, water board meeting before, I think they had said it would take us something like, $6 to $8 million to fix the, leaks over in Alabama Village, which is where a lot of our revenue is going, I think $75,000 a month. So if we're getting the $20 million, you said 11 million would be for the tank. Is that what you said?
Remember I talked about the lot tank, which is the big tank? That was not as quite a high priority. So I kind of pushed that out to 20 million, because I thought the $5 million for that tank would be better spent other places. Okay? So that's kind of 2027 type of money. Alabama Village. You'll see money for Alabama Village, but it's just for a couple of valves to isolate Alabama Village. ADEM will not give us money for condemnation of Alabama Village. That money has to come from somebody else, or somebody else has to go through the condemnation process. They are not giving us money to take care of moving people out of Alabama Village and or replacing the infrastructure within Alabama Village.
Right, so I'm trying to get clarity, maybe I'm missing, it's cutting out a little bit. So are you saying, okay, so
gonna give you money to replace all the pipes. You know, we recommend,
So-
we think there's a better solution for Alabama Village than replacing all the pipes.
So the better option would be to shut it off.
At some point, but we have to obviously, there's a lot of legal and political issues before that moves forward, and we're gonna talk about that a little later in the meeting.
And there's been meetings, I mean, it was us, but there's been most of us, right, there have been meetings with the, what is it, Christian House on the Phone, some citizens got private everything to it, in terms of the issue there, and we all know this, we gone over the same thing over and over. We all. Okay, no, okay, but I know some of the people do know it, that's actually some of the questions, you know. But, the bottom line is that they've already decided, and I know the Amy was in that meeting too, it's already been decided, you know, that, the people in Alabama Village, we have to find placement, and we know that the water board started off, said, cut everything off, and, just, the people got to move wherever they can find a way, they got to get out of there. And that was because of the citizens. When you say who is the council, runs the board, and who the board has to answer to, the citizens got together and demanded that those people would not be just on their own to find a placement. That the, state of Pritchard as well as Pritchard Housing Authority would get involved in regards to relocating the people in Alabama.
Now, the citizens did not say that. Some of the citizens may have said that, and you can only speak for the ones that said it. But every citizen did not say that, because what our position has always been, that if we started condemnation there, where would it stop? So we were not ever suggesting that they should be removed. Because they can come remove you from your house in that regard. So we not, all the citizens were not saying that. I disagree with that statement.
So your options, and I want to know why every meeting you sit by the very home.
Okay, let's move on to the next item. Yeah, yeah.
Why don't y'all invite the Pritchard Housing Authority here in these conversations we have? So they can make the largest landlords in the city.
And that's what this group is here for. If you guys want me to bring in somebody to speak in front of the group, we'll do that. But I think you need to listen to Mr. Connor, who's going to be our lawyer here, before we get into all of that, okay?
People at a meeting decide what happened. This everyday, modern day stuff. Yeah, now here, cut that off. People at a meeting decide what happened.
Okay, let's move on to the next item. Now, I think we've had some good news. We have somebody for free doing all our policies and procedures. We've done the analysis, what we need to do to our tanks. A&M is working with us to possibly bring in $20 million of grant money. All is going good. Now, some bad news. So, Pritchard Water has a operating budget. Pritchard Water works on a what we call fiscal year. The budget starts October 1 of one year and ends September 30 of the next year. So before I came in, the existing board put together a budget for fiscal year 2024, which started in October and ends in September. Okay, this is the original budget they implemented on October 1st, 2023. They thought there was going to be about $14.3 million of revenue. Expenses were going to be a little bit less than that. So the net income, what's left over, was going to be about $250,000. balanced budget. Okay, now, we went through the first quarter of the year, which was October, November, and December, and we had results. And we talked about it in the last meeting. Revenues were 19% lower than we projected. Expenses were 34% higher than we expected, which tells you there's probably something wrong with the budget. So we spent the last several weeks looking at the budget to try to come up with what is the realistic budget for Pritchard Water in fiscal year 2024. Unfortunately, this is what it is. $12.7 million of revenue, $18.2 million of expenses, and a deficit of $5.5 million. Now, the question is why? And there's probably two reasons. One, and I said in my first meeting, I was not here to look backwards or to criticize decisions that were made in the past, but frankly, there's some real problems with this budget that was put together October 1st, 2023. So let's start with the revenue. Why is the revenue down? Well, first of all, there was a rate increase that went in November 1st. Okay, the board in their budget assumed it was going to go in October 1st. So right there was some revenue that was in this budget that was not going to happen. But the biggest problem was you send out bills, you get money back. You send out $100, you get $90 back because people don't pay their bills. That means you have a 90% collection rate. So every $100 you spend out, you get 90% back. Okay. Every utility, even the richest communities in the country, don't get the $100. When they send out $100 worth of bill, they don't get $100 back. They may get $98 back, whatever. In 2023, Pritchard sent out $100 worth of bills and got $87 back. That's called an 87% collection rate. Now, actually, for a community with some of the affordability issues of Pritchard, that's pretty darn good. When I was in Flint, Michigan, it was less than 50% coming back. Okay, so 87%. Now, the board, in developing their revenues, assumed they were going to get 100% of it back, which is just totally unrealistic. Okay, so if you're going to get 87% of it back, that means the revenue is going to be substantially less. So the real driver going from 14.4 to 12.7 is just simply that. The rate increase timing was not what was in the budget, and the collection rates are not going to be 100% anywhere in the world. So it's just totally unrealistic. So we think this is probably a pretty good number if we can keep an 87% collection rate. That's going to be a challenge. It has to be, if anything, it might be a little bit lower. On the expense side, there are some things that the board frankly knew about when they put their budget together and ignored, and there are some things that they didn't know about when they're putting the budget together. It impacts the budget. So let me go. Sorry. So let me go over some of the things that they should have known about that didn't show up in the budget. Every year, we don't spend any money in Pritchard because we don't have any money to fix the pipes, right? So every year, they don't get better, they get worse. You get more leakage over time. So when you talk about the cost of purchased water from Mars, their costs go up, plus the amount we have to buy go up every year because the leakage is going up. Hopefully we can reverse that trend when we get some money. But anyway, they were very, very aggressive, meaning they budgeted relatively low for the purchased water at Mars, and we've already seen through the first quarter of the year, they've way underestimated the purchased water coming in. So it was about $650,000 more water to purchase water from Mars in this number because they just were very, very conservative in that. We paid the mayor and we paid Chickasaw what we call franchise fees for the right to open up the streets and things like that. It's about $325,000 a year. $272,000 I think we owe you for this year. We had Chickasaw $49,000. That wasn't in the budget at all. It did in this budget right here. The board is required So the bond default happened when the board stopped paying the money that they owed the bond trustee. Okay, so what the bond trustee is, they took money out of a reserve fund and paid the bondholders out of that, so they continue to get paid. Pritchard Water had an obligation to replenish that bond fund over a 6-month time period. That was not included in the budget. And here's the big one, and I hate to say this, but the bond default started occurring in January of 2023. And that's when they really stopped paying what they needed to pay the bond trustee. At that 2023. Yeah. The bond trustee at that time had to start looking for a remedy. And Pritchard Water knew, and the bond trustee knew, that there was going to be a trial. And the bond trustee was going to try to get a remedy, and Pritchard Water had to defend themselves against that in this trial. $1.3 million was spent in legal associated with that battle. That was not included in here, but it was spent. That now has to be included in this. Now we can all say, is that money well spent? No. You can make up your own mind, but unfortunately, it was money spent, and it did be included in this budget. And then there's a bunch of other miscellaneous things, like insurance went up and maintenance has gone up and all those sorts of things. So, it was a real swing and miss. Now, there are some things that the board didn't know about when they put their budget together. It's about $1 million worth of expenses they didn't know about. One is this issue of what was going to be in the receiver order regarding collections, and the fact there was going to be this potential 105-day delay in getting collections. So the revenue has gone down because of the new process that we have for collections. Now, ultimately, we'll catch up. Okay, because ultimately the 105 days will catch up. But
are you prevented from talking to young people?
I can talk to them to get modifications to the order. I can't do anything different until the actual order is changed. If this board decides, or this advisory group decides that you want me to take something back to young Peter and get that changed, I certainly will do that. But you need to understand, it was put into the order by people from this community. Huh? I'm not going to argue with you, man. Okay. One of the things that they didn't know about at the time of it is, right now the board is still battling the whole receiver order at the Alabama Supreme Court. There's a potential for another $200,000 in legal expenses to be spent in that battle. I had to put it in this budget because it's moving forward right now. Obviously, if that stops, then we say that. And then the third part is, I have a team. We have about $400,000 in the budget for my team. Now, be frankly, that's in this as well. And the board didn't know about that when the budget was put together. So there's about $4.5 million of expenses that they knew about that they didn't put into the budget. And there's probably another $1 million that they didn't know about that we had to put in the budget that results in this here. This is a big problem. Many utilities are part of a city government. So if the utility, was $5 million in the hole, they would take money out of some other department or property taxes to pay for it. And I just bring Flint because it's a very similar. When I was in Flint, they operated a $9 million deficit in the water department, but other departments subsidized it and brought it back. I don't have any other place to go for this money. Okay, now, so what am I going to do? Well, I'll be honest with you, every Thursday the bills come in, and I look at how much I have in the checking account, and some people I pay, and some people I don't pay. Okay. Clearly, there's going to be a bunch of people I'm not going to be able to pay. One of them might be the bond trustee. If I have to choose between buying water from Oz, which I do need, or paying the bond trustee, I may decide to I got to pay the money to buy water and maybe not pay the money to the trustee. that's the decisions I have to make all the time. And I'm telling you, this is gonna be a real challenge. And I've already promised you guys, I'm not raising rates, until we know what we're gonna look like long term. So I can't raise rates to get this number any higher. It's gonna be what it's gonna be.
And you cut jobs. That's what I always tell people. It's gonna be covered.
Yeah, but the thing you need, right. My gut feeling, looking at the staffing at Pritchard Water, there's probably 3 or 4 more people that they need. We don't have enough, okay, yeah.
Does the board have any assets that could be sold?
Does the board have any assets that can be sold? And Joe, the answer is no, not the only asset. We have a 15-person band that we have no use for, that we're gonna trade it in and get 2. We have a 15-person band that we have no use for, that we're gonna trade it in and get 2 old trucks for it. Because we can use them for the utility purpose, but other than that, I don't know of any, we don't have land we can sell. In fact, even if we did, we wouldn't have a whole lot of value. So.
But we have a vote at some time to get young, so you can go back to young kids and let them know we want the water board to operate as they have in the past. We don't want 105 days.
You went regarding the shut off? No, I work for the judge. I don't work for the bond holder. Eventually, but one thing you need to understand, the bonds they have, they got them in 1999. They're a 30-year bond, okay? So they'd like to be paid back over a 30-year period. So if we can turn this utility around in the next 5 years, so we can start paying them, then we still have another, 20 years left to pay them. So they're thinking very long term. The bondholders wanted me, I don't work for the bondholders, but they clearly wanted me here because they want me to kind of get some grant money, improve the system, turn things around, and then hand it over to somebody else with money there to pay them off long term. So that's the way they look at things. Well, so in July, that's when I present the alternatives. I mean, there are a lot of alternatives. There's concessionaire, there's MOZ, there's returning to the status quo, there's building a groundwater plant, there's building a surface water plant. There's a lot of options. And that's what I owe the courts in ADAM at the end of July. And
in your report, in a way, we one day got buying water from Mars and go back to all of.
So two of the alternatives that are being studied right now is developing a surface water treatment plant, and another alternative is to develop a groundwater treatment plant. And under both of those scenarios, we could go off of laws, but the challenge there is that ADEM requires that you have redundant supplies. So even if we were to develop a groundwater treatment plant, we would still have to have laws in reserve if we had a failure, and we have to still pay laws some money to have capacity to have that reserve available. So the economics may not work. I don't know.
But we won't have that much money like we pay now.
That's exactly right.
We're the biggest cost. That's wrong there.
You're 13% of their overall revenue. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know about this, and I'm not sure I can do a whole lot about this. And so, like I said, every Thursday I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna pay bills. Yeah. Full transparency.
Can the next month report you list the bills you're not paying?
I could. I mean, I don't have problems doing it.
You should.
I can. I mean, I know when the malls bill, I've not paid a malls bill in full yet this year.
So we need to know, the customer, we need to know which bills aren't being paid.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't have this before.
$27,000 a month. Because you probably have better information, because that's not long to see up to that water bill. And now I was in Brooklyn, just water, and the last time. Okay, my question is that, the last count that we heard from the budget, from Heidelberg, that $1.5 million that, is sitting there in an export account. And my question is, that money ever come over to the water?
Yeah, the money has come and been spent. The money has come over and been spent even before I arrived.
$1.5 million. Okay, Matt, my point is, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with what the mayor is saying. What I'm saying is that there was no transparency between the water board at that time when it would happen, that we didn't know in regards to the money came over and what happened.
Okay, so I anticipated that being an issue. So the next item on the agenda is legal issues. We're gonna talk about at least three things that I think are important to you. The corruption, the fire hydrants, and Alabama bills, okay? So when I came in to be the receiver, one of the things I needed to do is I needed to bring in legal counsel to handle some big issues and even little issues, dealing with somebody not paying their bill. And I worked with Joe, who's kind of a lawyer water guy for years, and he's working with us here. He's going to give you an update on those three things, and he'll have an answer to your questions. So, Joe, it's all yours. Have fun.
Thanks, John. I kind of thought he turned this over after the first time. Folks, thanks for coming today, and I've been following what you've been doing, kind of from a distance. I appreciate all your involvement and everything that everyone is really looking for the same thing. And that's what we're trying to do. That's trying to make the system better, improve for the citizens and the customers. So let me first kind of give you a summary of where the Synovus lawsuit is, because I think that's kind of important. And, you know, because John mentioned that the appeal is of the receiver order itself. And so, in addition to that, though, the underlying litigation, that's where what's in front of Judge Gunpeter, the board also filed a counterclaim against the bank trustee. So but then they filed the appeal of the order. When they filed the appeal of the order, they also asked Judge Gunpeter to stop receivership order while they were appealing. Well, he denied that. But one of the things that we did, we haven't done anything really in this case. My job is not to represent the receiver or former boards, to represent the receiver of this board. He's the operator of the system now under this order. We filed a motion, though, to stop all the litigation in the underlying suit because the attorneys for the board wanted to proceed, even with the appeal to the Supreme Court of the receiver order, which would have cost more attorneys. Right. So we immediately filed a motion to stay until the appeal was resolved, and really until July the 31st this year. The judge granted it. So we stopped, turned off the tap with respect to the attorney's fees in the underlying case.
Who's attorney?
The attorney's fees for the trustee and the attorney's fees for the board. And so that was stopped. However, the board's counsel, Mr. Parnell, also filed a motion to the Supreme Court to stay the receiver order to do the same thing. Fortunately, the Supreme Court denied that motion. So right now, the only thing at the Supreme Court, the only thing that really at issue in the underlying case is this appeal. And they're trying to say that Judge Young Peter did not act appropriately and committed error in appointing Mr. Young as the receiver of Mr. Young's company, as a receiver of the system. So that's where it stands right now. And so, but he did, Mr. Young also advised attorneys for the board that he was no longer going to pay their fees. So they filed a motion with the Supreme Court, or with Judge Young Peter, so to require Mr. Young and the current minister for the affiliate system to continue to pay their attorney's fees on appeal. The judge granted that. So he did grant that, but nothing on the underlying case. So that's where the 200,000 is coming in. That we're going to have to pay. 100 of that is what the estimate is from Parnell, Mr. Parnell, and 100 is the estimate from the trustees council to respond to. So that's where that stands right now. Let's go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
So what you're saying, at this point, we are paying, attorney fees, Jay Ross and all those guys, attorney, we're paying their attorney fees.
Jay Ross is not representing the board on the appeal. In that case, it's Mr. Parnell.
Okay, that's what I'm.
Yes, ma'am. It's Mr. Parnell, and his co-counsel on that is Mr. Parkman. But Mr. Parnell is the lead lawyer on that case.
Okay, so we're paying Mr. Cornell.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And the trustees fees.
And the trustee.
Yes. With respect to the criminal update, you're correct. We understand, we're not privy to it, but Mr. Young's primary role here is to get this system up and running. However, the receivership order does say that one of the things that he's empowered to do is to investigate fraud, corruption, things of that nature, to protect the assets of the system. But we've got to be real careful what we do, because we know that the district attorney's office already has 4 prosecutions, 4 indictments going forward against Mr. and Ms. Bradley, Randy Burden, and Teresa Lewis. Those have been identified. You all know this better than we do, as far as when all that took place, when they were arrested. And from what we can tell, that this occurred over a period from January of 18 to November of 21. That's when it looks like the fraud occurred. And from what we have been able to see, and this is primarily from what Mr. Ross, Jay Ross, had a consultant go in and look at the credit card statements. And she was able to determine, her best guess anyway, just looking at the statements, that there was about $426,000 spent for personal expenditures, Mardi Gras, travel, and something with unlimited auto. I don't really know what that is, but those were identified by this consultant as suspicious expenditures. And so that's what that's what we had already established or determined before we even got involved. So we know that that's potentially there. We really don't have the ability at this point, from what we know, to try to do anything more than that. And the thing is, if there is a civil case filed with these criminal prosecutions out there, those cases would be stayed until the criminal prosecutions are finished. And in those, there was actually, everyone saw the Nike boxes and the Louis Vuitton purses that were picked up from Ms. Bradley's house. They are being stored by the DA's office in some type of controlled environment. And so those would potentially be sold. But folks, that's not going to solve this problem. You know, even if we got the full $426,000 back. So, yes, ma'am.
People buy me different programs.
Mr. Yeah, she's asking, was Mr. Heidelberg indicted? He was not. The only people indicted at this stage today are Mr. and Ms. Bradley, Mr. Burton, and Ms. Lewis. So there's been no other board members charged, and, you know, we don't have any knowledge of any of that ourselves. Of course, John and I have been here since November. And he's been busy. Yes, ma'am. Oh, no, we have a question right here. I'm sorry, ma'am. We're here first.
The $400,000.
$426,000.
$400,000+. Now, did that come from the DA's office?
That came from an internal investigation that Mr. Ross commissioned a consultant to look at the credit cards of Pritchard Water System that Ms. Bradley, Ms. Lewis, and Mr. Bergman had access to.
They cannot come from the court.
No, ma'am.
The reason why I asked that question is because I've been to every court hearing that they've had. And the last count that I heard there is that it was 11, it came down to $11,000.
It may, and again, this has not been subject to, you know, any type of court proceeding.
As the rich say, in excess of $3 million have been misappropriated. I say way more than that. That money is still circulating in Pritchard.
Well, this is what we have right now. That's what we have internally, yes, ma'am. Now, where these cases are standing right now, no trial date's been set. So, and we're in touch, we'll be in touch with the DA's office to try to follow that. But right now, it's our recommendation that you let the court's proceedings flow on through. And if there is any type of restitution or forfeiture, things of that nature, after expenses come out of that to the DA's office, it would generate a flow back to the system. If anything's collected. Let me move on.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can they hear me? Was there insurance on this,
As best we can tell, and we're looking into that now, there was a policy, but it only had a $50,000 limit on it. And so we're not really sure. No. I'm sorry. There's two different things. I misunderstood you. The bond did require that the bonds, the indenture required that there be insurance. We don't think that the board ever purchased that for the bonds.
Okay.
We found no evidence of that. Yes, sir.
Each of the individuals who are working, there may be a $25,000 to $50,000 for individual.
That's correct, and that's what I was referring to. We found at least one policy that we're gonna make a claim on, but it was only, the maximum on it was 50. I think that's what you think.
I'm sorry, there's a delay, it keeps freezing up, so.
Okay.
Again, but.
When he was talking, I'm just trying to get some clarification on, what the mayor was saying. I'm not trying to, say he's some person, some sex, but you got a moderator up here.
Okay, was your question answered, Matthew?
Okay,
No,
Sarah.
sir, my question was not answered.
Hey, Jim, is there a way to put a hand up, and that way we can?
Yeah. I'm asking her to email, text me the question.
Okay, yeah, if you could just email the question, or with Ms. Carletto to Jim, that'll be better. Thank you. Okay, now we're back.
I was just trying to get some clarification because I don't understand, what the mayor was talking about. Individual people that you name, the bond is set.
I was referring to household that each individual have, up to $50,000 up to the point, but some of them have 25, $6,000 per individual.
Yeah, Mayor, I don't think it's the individuals who, I think the system provided it
Yeah, they, I'm saying, yes.
for their
Yes,
activities.
for each of those individuals.
That's correct.
That's a part of the policy. Yeah.
And we're looking, we'll have an answer for you, a report on the next meeting with respect to that. Yes, sir.
Carletta was asking, does the board have insurance?
It's the same $50,000 policy. So it's, the answer to that, insurance for any type of fraud, things of that nature, nothing more than what we found in that $50,000 policy. Okay, let me move on to a question regarding the hydrants, and I think I can kind of clear that up, Mayor, because you are correct. There was a settlement. This case was apparently filed back in 2018. And it was resolved in September of 2023. And as part of, as it was a stipulated, agreed order entered by Judge Young Peter. And here are the terms of it. The city agreed to pay the city of Pritchard agreed to pay $1,066,225.63 to the water company. And within 30 days of receipt of that, the water company was going to pay the city, and did pay the city, $257,282.81, which was the total amount due for the 2022 franchise license fee that the water company owed the city. That was done. So that was, all those funds transferred. There is one minor thing left in the case. That was resolved. The only other issue was resolved. The city has took position in the case. Yes, the city took a position in the case that the board didn't have the authority to increase the fire hydrant rate without getting city approval. Is the best I understand. And so that issue is still pending in front of Judge Young Peter. The briefs have all been filed, and everyone's waiting for him to rule on that issue.
And that was because of unilateral, we were saying,
Right.
because of agreement.
And the board took the other position. And this is not Mr. Young, this is the prior board. So we're waiting to hear that. And as part of that, also, it was determined that there were 1,054 fire hydrants that they paid a fee on. Now, we also Arcadis did a fire hydrant survey to make sure all those fire hydrants were working. And if that number increased or decreased, then the city is going to be responsible for whatever that number was, or get a credit if it was less than that. So that's not been totally resolved, but we'll find that, and we'll work with the city, and everybody knows that's going to happen. In addition to that, every year after, we do another survey at the cost of the water company to determine if what that number is, the hydrants. So that's on an ongoing basis going forward, which Mr. Young, I told him about this just the other day. That's not in his budget for this next year, but we will have to address that issue.
Who's checking to see if the 1,000 fine wood? Who's checking on that?
That's the engineering firm that's going to be hired. Arcadis did it this past year, and we'll do whoever we can go to, but they'll actually go out and blow the hydrants, turn them on, turn them off, and everybody will know what that number is. We're going to be doing that in Chickasaw too.
Is that so very, very important right now? We really need more money.
It's important because what's been missing.
Important, but
Yeah.
when you broke, it ain't got food, you gotta make decisions.
Well, the good thing is the city is paying the fee and will pay an increased fee if the judge says that's what they're supposed to do. And what this does is generate trust between not only the city and the company, but that's what we're trying to do.
And the good news is as we start spending some of the $20 million, hopefully the number of hydrants that proper close and properly maintained go up. And the city benefits from that on their insurance rating and all of that. And the utility benefits from a higher fee. So potentially a win-win.
Yes. So that's, yes, ma'am.
In the, I'm going back to this $1.5 million. Now, in regards to that, so who was paying this money? I mean, the city was not paying the water bill at this time, so.
Now, the city was paying water bills, they weren't paying the hydrant.
Okay, they were not paying the hydrant bill.
Yes.
Okay, and it was being, so where did the money come from?
It was being escrowed. The city was not paying it to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor. My understanding was that the city was paying at the 2018 rate, $27 a hydrant, into a bank account, an escrow fund. So they were making the payments until the litigation was resolved.
Wasn't being held to begin
It's over, it's just a matter of the judge ruling now. Okay, the last thing I'm gonna kind of turn to is Alabama Village. And I know that everyone, you were familiar with, some of you were anyway, the concession proposal that was part of the board's defense, the receivership action. And so as part of that, the proposal included, my understanding, that there would be money to fund the acquisition of 38 parcels, and which are owned by, we actually have 41 accounts, there's 38 parcels that those attached to. So that's really all we knew about when John and our firm became involved. I really didn't know what Alabama Village was. It's one of my first jobs. I went through Alabama Village with John, and we saw, what the situation is. We heard the stories, and we looked. But what I first asked for was, well, how many lots are we talking about in Alabama Village? If it's just 38 lots, will that solve the problem? Well, the answer to that is, I don't think so. Because what we've gone through and gotten the plat that shows all the properties. And we put it on a spreadsheet on who owns what. And there's over 500 tracts of land, 500 parcels. Approximately half of it is owned by either the city or the housing authority. However, about 250 of those tracts are privately owned. 38 of those tracts are the ones that are our customers. But what we have here is a situation where you have close to 210, probably 215 privately owned tracts in this area that are not current customers. But if the goal here, and I think it should be the goal, is to have some type of master plan to redevelop this community, that community and area to benefit everyone, buying 38 homes is not going to do it. Yes, sir.
The biggest problem is Alabama Village is such a house, biggest problem, right? But they do not have to keep their property up like us too. They really do not enforce them to do it. And so when you have stuff in it, they have to take the back unit. It does not keep us, that's the biggest problem, that's the start.
Right.
Hold them accountable like you hold our cultural citizens now.
Well, all I'm telling you guys is this answer is not as simple. Even if we had the money, or if the system had the money to buy these homes and put in 2 valves and shut off the water, then that's not going to solve your problem, we don't think. It may solve the water leak problem, but it may create another problem because I do eminent domain work as well across this country. And the only thing that we have is a resolution that was adopted by the past Pritchard board in March of 2023 that created a moratorium on new meters to those 200 or so folks that don't have water service. I haven't found a legal opinion from anyone that says that that resolution is enforceable. It hasn't been contested, but so what I'm suggesting is that this really requires a bigger approach than just buying 38 homes. Yes.
Same thing, think about 200 plus a man. So we just so just let them sit in the boat. We gonna get that government to talk. Let the $3 come in for it, and talk. And some kind of way we can come to an agreement about these 200 on these property. You got 200, you got 200 people that citizens that are on it individually. And I'm quite happy you go to the tax thing, you can sell a letter to 200 some people. Like you said, one letter for 200 people, and get them in this thing and sit down.
Well, that approach is what we're trying. That's going to be the next step. Because when we first came in, the comment was, okay, we'll just buy those homes and cut off the water. That may create some more problems.
I'd like to make clear. Sure. The land banking, we have land banking. That's the way that you're speaking. 200.
Right.
38 properties, that's a question for someone that's interested to cut the water off, repurpose that the land as it relates to those individuals. Well, I don't think it's so much creating additional problem. It's just from our perspective is that you gotta resolve a matter that exists in Alabama Village. And it has to have a stop point to do that. Right? The other land we talk about, there is nothing on that. So it won't have an impact on anyone other than those 38 that's in question. So let's deal with the 38 in question and not worry about the others because there's nothing there.
Well, we understand that, Mayor, and if we can do that and come up with the money to do that, then that's an easy solution. But all I'm trying to do is raise the perspective that this is, when we first came into it, we looked at it and said, all right, let's get our arms around the whole thing and see what it's going to take. And that's why I'm presenting this to you in that manner. Now, the other thing I'll say is we do have appraisals. And this was done under the prior administration. We have appraisals on all 38 properties, or 37, I believe. And the total appraised value. Well, good question. Going back and looking at it in the resolution, it says 41, but we've gone back and looked. Yeah, 41 is the number of meters. Okay, but those attached to 38 parcels.
What's the total value of the property? That's the total value.
The total market value of these appraisals, okay, reflect is about $1.1 million. And there's a high of, say, 368,000. I'm not sure what that track is, and a low of 1,600. The big one is the like that's kind of like.
Sure.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, first, let me start by saying this is this should take a holistic approach. I think that there needs to be some public-private partnerships that are looked at. But what the mayor is saying is correct in that, yes, the water is going to those 38 people, and yes, if we shut them off or move them out, that may appear to solve the problem. But at the end of the day, what Pritchard and Mr. Young said this from the very first day that we spoke with him, is that this is for our city, right? And that is developable land. We should be trying, we have an affordable housing
And what you have to start, you gotta start someplace. And so someplace is you cannot put anything there until you have the infrastructure.
One time the house started had so many millions of dollars. They never got around with it. And then the money went back to the government. But there's another thing, the Alabama business is the most valuable land in the whole city of Princeton. The reason I say that, the interstate runs straight through it to the back, to the back of the interstate. I can use all that for commercial traffic.
Well, and I think that what we're getting to
And
here,
not only that, not only that, the vicinity to down to other, employment areas, it is very close as well. And it just does not make sense that we just shut it off or propose to shut it off. But there's millions of dollars out here right now, that we can tap into to try to develop that infrastructure, to develop that land over there. And the stormwater management system over there is not working properly either. So, I mean, that's the other thing. I do understand, Mr. Young, that
okay,
we gotta do that, and take over there and fix the pipes, and the stormwater management system is not fixed.
The asset management plan is addressing around, the sanitary system, the water system, and we believe that there's some issues with the storm system that the city owns, but it's impacting us, so we're gonna try to address that.
What I think I want to try to leave you guys with, and we've been discussing this as far as being proactive going forward, is the first 3-4 months has been entirely focused on getting his hands around this system and getting things in place and getting some capital dollars moving in our direction, so that now we can try to move forward with projects like Alabama Village, in cooperation with the city, the housing authority, the county, public-private partnerships. So that's going to be kind of the next part of this, as part of this master plan, it has to be addressed that we're putting together.
We have 5 minutes left. Can I? Go ahead.
I wanted to say one thing because anyway, Alabama, Village has always been used as a stepping stone for agencies getting money here in the city of Princeton. If you go back and do research, I'm sure you're gonna find out that just about every grant, with the city, Princeton Housing Authority, Alabama Village has been included in it. And then in the final analysis, it was $60 million, and I know Mr. Clifford is talking about here, that was allocated for Alabama Village, and then they stopped that. So that's been an ongoing problem in terms of Alabama Village. But we cannot, and I say that again, because the board, before Mr. Young came aboard, the board wanted to just shut down Alabama Village, period, and not relocate the people or anything. And so through trials and tribulations that we went through, to get this to where you are now with it, that's why Judge Young got involved, of course, got involved in everything, so that we can find out exactly what is going on, so we can know how to press our way forward. And I think that the research and the steps that you make step by step and brick by brick, and a citizen called me and told me, and I'm gonna shut up, that they have never had the information that they have now since you've been in, Mr. John Young, as far as the service and everything on that, what is that, that you all do, the website, that, I mean, everybody's talking about it over the entire city as far as the information and stuff that they are seeing. I have a living disability, but they never had that type of transparency. And again, we want to thank you for that. We are here to work things out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. Let me, I think I got 3 action items coming out of this. One is, you're telling me, when I look at all the alternatives, make sure I really focus on the structure and the governance associated with the ruling body of whatever it might be, whether it be, whatever it might be. That's an important part to focus on, is that governance and how under boards and the powers that they have and all those. That's one of my action items, which we'll address in July. The second was, Joe is trying to get our arms around this $50,000. You know, how many, is it just 50,000 or is it 50,000 times the number of employees associated with the corruption? And the final one was, and this is what I need from you guys, what do you want me to take back to Young Peter regarding collections? Right now, the collection process is somebody who's not paid their water bill for 60 days, we approach them and we say, you gotta pay your bill. If they say they'll go on a payment plan, which means I pay my full bill the following month plus a little bit more until I catch up. They have 45 days to go on that payment plan, but what it's really saying is you have 60 plus 45 days before you need to start paying anything. If you then want me to go back to Young Peter and try to shorten that time, say 30 days and maybe 15 days on a payment plan, I'm willing to do that, but you guys need to tell me what you want me to go back and ask Young Peter to do. Because as I said, it was community networks that put that into the receiver.
We need to know who those people are that work for the different.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
I think that there should be, I think the problem is that there is a time in which they dispute bills, right? And if they don't take that dispute, then they have to pay.
Right, that's the 45 days, Chris. They have 45 days to accept the payment plan
For
or,
the receipt of the bill.
no, after the 60 days, then another 45 days to the plan. If you want me to shorten that, fine, but that's what the receiver order says.
Yeah, so it should be short. No. And once they receive the bill, it's $2,000. There should be a clear way for me to come down and dispute that bill immediately.
We're not talking about the receivers.
We're not talking about receipts. You can stop it. No, and then they have the no, that's not the way it is right now. That's not the way it's written in the order.
Right, you can come down and we'll go out and reread your meter and make sure that the reading is right. And if the reading is right, then we're gonna proceed with, you need to pay the bill. And if you can't pay the bill, you come to us and say, I'll pay the next bill in full, but I'm gonna pay an extra $20 a month until I catch up. That's the payment plan you're talking about. But you have 45 days to come to an agreement on the payment plan. Do we want to shorten that period of time?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think we should shorten that.
Why would you want to shorten it? Because
I don't think you should shorten that.
It's legal to take advantage of that and would not pay that bill for.
you can't say that because it's some people that live in this city that are on fixed income. I was behind a lady yesterday at the water company. She was getting on a payment plan. And the lady told the lady, because the service lady, I am on a fixed income. And I have to, you need to give me enough time, told her how much time. And she said, well, I'll pay my regular bill and I'll pay something on the other bill. So
And we have everybody in our
she
customer
gave her
service is
the
trained to do
payment
that.
plan. It was 3 payment plans. And the lady picked the first. I'm standing behind her, listening to her. So you can't say that, you know, you need to shorten that because you have citizens in this city that are only getting one income. And it's not right. The citizens of Princeton did not put themselves in this predicament. The board did. The board did. From the front, I'm gonna say what I got to say and I'm done. From the front to the back. It started over here.
Yes, yeah, okay.
So y'all have already worked out types of payment plans that the person can come and pick out. I think the only thing that needs to be shortened is 45 days to decide because the person is also.
They can wait to the end of the 45 days.
Yeah, well, in that 45 days, they're also accruing additional debt to the water board.
They're not paying.
If they're not paying it. So if you reduce since they have plans for the citizen to look at and choose to pay, you can do that in less than 45 days. They can get their payment plan started. Then they're not accruing additional debt that they're trying to pay off if they have a payment plan in place. So it would help the citizen. It would also help the board to start collecting that money.
I'm not understanding I'm not understanding, Tim. I'm not understanding what you're saying.
She's just saying that 45
Mr.
days.
Young, is there disputing that you-
They're just talking about timeframe, maybe 45 days might be too shorter. No decision's been made. It's just
I'm asking you, so when they come in and after they dispute their bill, they're saying that they have 45 days to choose a plan?
Yes,
Is that what's being?
yes,
That's correct, yes.
they don't have to pay it back in 45 days, they have 45 days to go on a plan.
45 days to go on.
That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Well, that's the order.
That's the order.
That
That's the
doesn't
way
make
the order
sense.
says.
What thought we were doing is within that one. Okay, so I thought within that 45 days, we're determining of the bill. So if I come in and I dispute my bill, I say, you say I have a leak, I say I don't have a leak. Then we have that 45-day window to figure out what that is. But in the interim, you're saying nobody's paying anything, they're not on a payment plan, is that right?
Roland, I think, why don't we call with Joe? My question was, since the attorney said that he wasn't sure, clarify that, the policy that finance administration put in place by the board of accountability. Is it possible that you can do this?
Well, if there's an existing meter going to it, and let's say a tenant changes the person who lives there, we will provide service. The resolution, they said, we're not gonna put any new meters in at any time, but they said.
Well, no, what I said was, we don't have a legal opinion on that, but it's been followed. It's been followed. Something contested.
Okay, so how do we resolve this? Do we want to shorten it? Or is this something the advisory council wants to get together between now and the next meeting? Tell me what you want, because I'll do what you guys want, I just need some direction.
Stay the same.
Okay.
But you don't got one thing to say. But we can still, I don't think when these boards can be elected by the 5 districts, because part about the council, it ain't never worked.
Well, that's something, that's something we're gonna. Anything else? That was the action.